The first episode of the third season of The Next Generation is called Evolution, and this one was written by Michael Piller, from a story by Michael Piller and Michael Wagner, who was originally going to be the head of the writing staff, and it was directed by Winrich Kolbe, and it originally aired on September 23rd, 1989. Now, as the show opens, Wesley Crusher is found sleeping in the laboratory working on some type of experiment. We're not sure exactly what, but he is awakened by Commander Riker ordering him to the bridge. And once we get to the bridge, we find out that a man named Dr. Paul Stubbs is aboard the Enterprise. And Dr. Stubbs is a scientist who is really famous, and he's ordered the Enterprise to assist him in a time-critical experiment. Once every 197 years, the matter that builds up on the surface of a particular star explodes, and that creates the galaxy's equivalent of Old Faithful, basically. Now, as Shuttle Bay 2 prepares to launch Dr. Stubbs' experiment, computer systems start to fail the Enterprise for some reason. Now, the problems increase and threaten the mission, and Dr. Stubbs is so distraught because this is his experiment's life's work, basically. And he takes his frustrations out on Captain Picard and constantly reminds him that the Federation has ordered them to assist Dr. Stubbs in this experiment. Now, the crew finally locates the problem, and they find out that while working on his experiment for genetics, Wesley Crusher allowed 2 nanites to escape. Now, nanites are tiny machines with billions of bytes of memory, and they're designed to enter the cells of living tissue and make repairs. Now, normally they only work alone, but Wesley taught them to work together to reproduce and make each generation better, basically. So thousands of the nanites have invaded the computer core, and they're eating the memory chips. Now, Dr. Stubbs recommends that they exterminate the nanites, but Picard refuses to do this because he's worried that they might have reached the point where they are now intelligent and therefore alive. So Data, LaForge, and Wesley are working in the main computer to clear the nanites, and Dr. Stubbs suddenly enters, and he fires gamma radiation into the memory banks and destroys all the nanites in the upper core. Now, the nanites respond by pumping nitrous oxide onto the main bridge, which really, because it's a specific reaction on their part, lends to further credence to the possibility that they might be an intelligent life form. Now, after working with the Universal Translator for some time, Data contacts the nanites, and with Picard's permission, he allows the nanites to enter Data's neural network so they can meet face-to-face with Picard and actually negotiate a truce. Now, Dr. Stubbs apologizes for his actions, and the nanites finally agree. And they help repair the main computer, and then they desire to leave the ship because they believe they're even beyond the Enterprise's capabilities, and they desire to go elsewhere. So the nanites do depart, and Dr. Stubbs' experiment becomes a success. And during this episode, another interesting part, we see the return of Dr. Beverly Crusher, who is concerned about Wesley because she feels like everything is going too well. He's moving along in his career as an officer, but she's wondering, is he really growing at a healthy rate as a boy and into a man? But unfortunately, by the end of the episode, Dr. Crusher does spot Wesley talking and socializing with an attractive young lady in 10 Forward, and she's finally happy that he is able to socialize and just enjoy life and not just be spending the rest of his time on the Enterprise in the laboratory and doing Federation work. So she's pleased by this, and of course she asks Guinan what she knows about this girl. And that is the end of the first episode of the new season. Now, this episode, compared to the first episodes of the first 2 seasons, I think would be considered more of a B episode, It's nothing where as dramatic, I would say, as Encounter at Farpoint, of course, with Q, and not even as dramatic as the child from the second season. But this is a good, solid episode, and something that actually got Michael Piller the job as head of the writing staff and a producer on the show. And one thing I really like about it is Michael Piller lends his love of baseball onto the show by putting that in Dr. Stubbs' character. And that really appeals to me because I'm a huge hardcore baseball fan and Chicago Cub fan. So it's nice, as you can see in this picture, this is where Dr. Stubbs gives his speech to Wesley and really tells him about how, like baseball, certain people have a hard time having patience and waiting for these wonderful moments to happen, as Dr. Stubbs has been waiting in his career. Because baseball is a slower game, and eventually baseball faded out of existence because people wanted faster games, much like people do today. I wouldn't be surprised if baseball, America's pastimes, continues to decline, unfortunately. But you heard it first here on Next Generation that that's going to happen. But a great speech that Piller wrote here in this particular scene, and the character of Dr. Paul Stubbs is portrayed by Ken Jenkins, who you may remember as Dr. Bob Kalso in Scrubs, who I thought was absolutely hilarious in that show. And at the time when I first watched that, I didn't pick that up, but it is interesting to see him again here. So a good solid effort at the beginning of the third season. Stay tuned for the next episode, and I'll talk to you guys then. Little PS before I actually go, guys. One thing I forgot to mention is that this is a great episode where we finally see some character development of Wesley Crusher. I've complained for the past 2 seasons how they've written Wesley as kind of an elementary school kid when he is actually a teenager, and finally Michael Piller, what's so great about his writing is that he's actually acknowledging that Wesley is growing up and really writing him more as a teenager, and a child prodigy teenager at that, but not a little kid anymore. So I really like that. Kudos to that on this episode. Okay, that's it, guys. Stay tuned for the next one.